Hello advocates, I am happy to be here with you guys today. Vince somehow talked me into doing this. So we're gonna share a little knowledge with you guys on writing estimates and what looks good on them, how to make them look good, and how to use them so you can maximize your claims. I'm Mario Rios. I'm the owner of Claim Preparation Experts. We're an estimating company that's been in business since 2011. We do estimating, appraisals, and umpire work. I've been doing this for 13 years, so I know a little thing or two about what do we got to put on these things so that you can maximize the payout for your clients. We write estimates for 25 different firms in Florida, New York, California, Texas, all over the place. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of what the heck we need to do with these estimates, right? It's always the least exciting part of the claim, having to sit there and put together the numbers, put together the estimate. What I always tell everybody when they're new to this industry and they're starting off is learn to sketch. Sometimes guys don't want to sketch, they just want to use dimensions. Some guys don't even write estimates, which is crazy. You need to know what your claim is. You need to know what it's going to cost. You need to know how you're going to negotiate it. And the first part of doing that is learning how to sketch. Learn what that house looks like so that when you do 50 claims a month, you can actually remember what that house looks like because you did a sketch. You took your pictures. You were prepared for when it was time to negotiate that claim. The other reason you want to sketch, you want to be able to offer it to the guy on the other side. It's so valuable when you're an adjuster and the IA shows up and you can tell them, hey, I've got it sketched. Do you want my ESX file? It's so helpful. Some guys may not want it, but it really helps you bridge a gap and start working with the other side from day one. So learn how to sketch. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can do it on paper. You can do it on your iPad. Some guys do it on their laptop while they're there. I don't because that takes too long and I'm in and out fast. But if that's what you want to do it, but learn how to sketch, right? It's one of the most important things. The second most important thing when you're working on these estimates, documentation, your pictures. Create a system. Know that every time you go into a room or into a house, do it in the same way every single time. One, it'll help you down the road when you're writing your estimates. Two, as we all know in this industry, a lot of these files end up in litigation. And if you can show that you've got a process for how you do things and it's the same way every single time, it makes your estimate, it makes your claim that much stronger when you're having to sit in front of a deposition. So I always tend to tell people, I like to start on the right-hand side of the house and then go right to left every single time, document my photos that way. When you're documenting these photos, create a system. Every time I go into a room, I take a picture of that room, I then take a picture of the ceiling and a picture of the floor. That way you're showing everything in that room. And don't just do it from one side. Walk into that room and then take a picture of what you just looked at the opposite way, looking back at that doorway potentially, so that you're showing what that room looks like. I know there's a lot of softwares out there. Some guys are using Matterport. If you're not using that system, take a video. It's gonna give you the same emphasis as when you do one of those higher priced softwares. So you can go into that house, document everything with pictures, walk back through a second time and take a video. You now have the same thing you would be doing through a high priced software by using your phone or your camera or whatever system it is that you have in place. So make sure you take those pictures. When you're taking pictures in an area, if you're starting in a room, take the overview, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. You want to show where it is in that room and exactly what it is that's damaged. If you're at the house and you're the first person there and you have a thermal imaging camera, use it. That thermal imaging camera, when you're the initial person on site, is going to help you show where that water damage has gone through. Because if I'm showing up a week later or 10 days later and the pipe's been fixed and the remediation company's been there and I'm coming in to take pictures, guess what? Thermal imaging isn't going to do anything for me because everything's already been dried out. So if you're the first person on site and you've got a thermal imaging camera, use it. It will help you with your estimate. It'll help you show continuation of floors. It'll help you show areas that are affected that you're not going to see with the naked eye. So it's very valuable. Back to the pictures, use those pictures to your benefit. If you've got floors that are continuous throughout the house, show that the floors are continuous. Make sure you're taking pictures of those openings, of the doorways, of the closets. Show that what you've got inside those rooms. If you've got a TV, if you've got window blinds, all of those little items on an estimate are how you increase your dollar value at the end of that estimate. And it's tedious sometimes, right? You got to sit there and check off all these little boxes. Oh, I've got 3 trims in this room. I've got 2 window blinds. And you forget them. And guess what? Sometimes you're going to forget them. That's why you always have your pictures to be able to go back on them. But something as simple as window blinds can add $500, $1,000 to your estimate because you took time to document it and you took time to do a checklist of everything that was in that room that was damaged. I don't use it as often anymore because I've been doing this for so long, but I have a checklist. When I go into a house, I'm documenting it. Are there tile floors? Is it laminate? Is it engineered? Is it hardwood? Because you're going to forget. And sometimes you're looking at the picture and guess what? You can't tell if it's a hardwood, you can't tell if it's an engineered floor, you can't tell if it's laminates. And you're asking yourself, what the heck am I going to write? Right? And we're going to get into those line items soon. We're going to get into what you should be putting in those estimates because that's just as important as all this stuff that I'm talking about. But I'm trying to give you the base so that when you go to write the estimate, you're doing it the right way. I always tell everybody when I talk about estimates, you're writing that estimate like if you're going to depositions. Like someone's going to grill you and everything you wrote on there is 100% incorrect and you're crazy for writing it and putting it on paper, right? So we want to make sure that what you're putting on there makes sense and is useful. When you're in those rooms and you've sketched them and you've taken all your pictures, you've done all your walkthrough as to everything you're going to do in that house, now it's time to figure out what are you actually going to write? What are the items that are going to go into these estimates? As you all know, whether you use Xactimate or Symbility or Simso, there's a bunch of different softwares that you can write on. I myself write on Xactimate and I also write on Symbility, have opinions on both, but learn how to use multiple systems because it's going to be invaluable to you regardless of whatever side you are in this industry. Some companies only want you to write on certain software, so it's important to be able to know how to use each individual system, how to sketch on each system, and how to put in line items on these systems. I'm going to give you tips on how to use Xactimate. It's what most of us use. It's what most of the insurance companies use. So when you're writing an estimate and you want to try to compare apples to apples down the road, usually you're going to write it on Xactimate. Whenever I write estimates, I think of 2 things when I'm writing the estimate. What's damaged? What can I put in here? And what's going to hold up down the road if this estimate ends up in an appraisal or an umpire panel or in litigation. A lot of times you write an estimate and the initial insurance company doesn't agree to half your items. They don't agree, the initial field adjuster doesn't agree to specific line items. Fine, don't get caught up in that stuff. Get caught up in the stuff that you need rooms agreed upon and damages agreed upon. And if you documented your claim properly, you can later argue in terms of the quality of product that's in that estimate. For example, you go to write floors and it's a tile floor. If you're looking on Xactimate, Xactimate has 16 classifications for tile floors. Are you going to write the most expensive one every single time? Because I can tell you right now, if that's what you're doing, you're not doing yourself a favor. You're doing yourself more harm than good. Yeah, you're coming up with a high number. Yeah, you got a big estimate. But when that estimate goes to get looked at, nobody's going to agree to your figures. So what you're doing is you're giving yourself a false sense of what you should settle the claim for, and the person you're going to be dealing with immediately starts to think, well, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's just giving me high numbers. So on the tiles, there's a bunch of different classifications. There's tile floor covering, ceramic tiles. There's marble. There's all those different types of materials. One of the things you need to do is become fluent and learn what types of materials are what, right? Even in those same materials, I tend to always write ceramic tile. Now in that ceramic tile, I use that for just about every tile classification, unless they're really nice floors, okay? But if you go into a house, 9 out of 10 times you're going to run into a ceramic tile. Even ceramic tile has high grade, standard grade, premium grade. Okay, so know that you're going to have a nice 12 by 12 tile that can cost whatever it is. Or if you've got wood floor tiles, those tiles are going to be more expensive. You can have the ability to increase that line item cost and justify it. You can justify a lot of these things by doing some of your own research, right? So when you write up these floors, if you write them as high grade, guess what? Jump on Home Depot, jump on some of the flooring companies and verify what they've got that price per square foot on, right? So you know whether your numbers make sense or not. Because if you're writing the floors at $6.99 a square foot and that material, when you go look it up, is $13.99, you're gonna have a problem. Your homeowner is gonna come back and say, hey, you didn't write enough. Or your homeowner is gonna come back and say, how come you wrote so much and I'm not getting that number? So the estimate is good for you to have so that you know what you're really gonna settle that claim for. I hear it all the time from homeowners that end up looking at my estimates down the road, and sometimes they'll question, well, how come this isn't on there? Why is this not on there? And there's times that the homeowner, for example, will have a kitchen, and that kitchen has laminate countertops. But when they go to do their kitchen now, they want to put in granite. That's not something the insurance company is going to pay them, right? It's an upgrade. But they want me to write the granite on the estimate. That doesn't work like that. So you got to know when you're writing on the estimate what's covered, what's not covered, like and kind materials. And obviously, you don't want to underestimate what you're doing, right? So if you have a little bit of hesitation, man, is it $8.99 a square foot or is it $10.99 a square foot? Go ahead and err on the side of, I'd rather put the one that's a little bit more expensive. And if I have to walk down from that number a little bit, you give yourself that room. But if you know it's $10.99 and you're trying to write it for $19.99 a square foot, guess what? Nobody's going to take it serious. Everybody's just going to go, all right, great, you wrote me a high number. When that appraiser, when that umpire, when whoever it is you're negotiating it with looks at your estimate, they're going to immediately go, all right, half this stuff doesn't matter, half this number doesn't matter because it doesn't make sense. I see it all the time on estimates when I do peer reviews, and I get estimates from stuff that other guys wrote. And they're writing in their building codes and they're writing in their, a bunch of other stuff to try to increase their number. And some of those things apply. I'm not telling you they don't, but you have to know when they apply and when they don't. Because when you're doing a kitchen claim and you're putting in their stuff that's potentially for new build construction as your justification for why you're trying to ask for certain damages in this room, in this estimate, it's not going to make sense. The opposing side is going to look at it and go, that doesn't apply. And they're just immediately going to scratch that off of your number. I hear it all the time where, well, I wrote an estimate for 100 grand. I want 80% of my number. But if your number isn't real, you're not going to get 80% of that number. Because the other side's going to look at it and go, he wrote 100, but the real number here is maybe 70. And they're going to tell you, they're going to offer you maybe 80% of that 70,000 instead of 80% of that 100,000. And then you got to figure out, well, why am I getting so little? And reasons you're getting so little is because you're putting in, as they say, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you just put stuff in there to fluff your own number, doesn't matter what you're going to write. It doesn't make sense. Write estimates that make sense. I get it all the time. You want to increase your number. You want to do right by your client. You want to get them as much money as possible. I think that's why we're all in this industry. We're in it to make a little bit of money, but we're in it to help people. We're in it to make sure that when somebody has a problem, they can go back to what their house was like before, and you feel good about the fact that you were able to help them do that. So when you're writing an estimate, you want to look at where did the damage occur, and in any type of claim, when you have that damage, how do you expand from those areas? So when you've got tile floors that are damaged, if you're replacing those tile floors, well, what's going to happen to their baseboards? A lot of times they're going to tell you, oh, I'm going to detach and reset the baseboards. Know that when you do that and you try to reinstall them, those baseboards are going to be damaged. So know that you're going to write to remove and replace, and know why you're going to write to remove and replace. Because you're going to get asked, well, the baseboards aren't damaged. I don't need to replace them. I just need to detach them. Know that that's great in theory, but in the real world life practice, when that baseboard gets removed and it goes to get reinstalled, if it's gotten warped, you can't use it again. So if you didn't write the remove and replace, now the homeowner has a problem if you've settled the file because they're going to be short on the amount of money you got them. But always start where the problem is. For example, if it's a floor, you're going to go floors, did it fit my baseboards? When my baseboards are affected, how does that affect my walls? Do I have crown moldings? You start wherever the problem is and you expand out. Same way you do it with the ceiling. When you've got damage to the ceiling, what's going to happen in that ceiling? Where are the areas that are affected? If I've got a ceiling, what's on those ceilings? Do I have registers, lights, chandeliers, ceiling fans? That goes back to what I was telling you. Document it. Take pictures of it. So every single one of those little items adds value to your estimate. Okay? When you're doing texturing on the ceilings, why is it important to remove these items? I get told all the time, well, I'm only going to blend in that one little spot. And that's garbage, because you're not returning that ceiling to its pre-loss condition, and you're always going to potentially be able to tell where that patch is. So when you're writing ceilings, you're going to texture the whole thing. When you're texturing that whole ceiling, you got to take the stuff that's on the ceiling off so that you could do the texturing properly. All the time I get told, well, why is that going to affect the crown molding? When you go to texture a ceiling that has crown moldings, you're going to texture it and damage the crown molding. It has to come off for you to be able to texture that ceiling properly. So know the applications on how you do things. Know the real life practice on how you do things. When you're writing these estimates, I always tell people all the time, become friendly with your general contractors, the guys that eventually get hired to do the work. Learn from the building department sometimes what their requirements are on how things have to go in, because that'll teach you specific line items when you're putting in. Know the differences between drywall, plaster. Huge differences in monetary value. And I see it all the time where somebody came in, just wrote it up as drywall. You're looking at the damages in appraisal, and all of a sudden you got plaster everywhere. And there's huge differences that sometimes you can and can't get in. So know what the materials are like. Know if you've got wire mesh behind that stuff when you're writing those estimates. All those little items are going to help you increase your end game, which is having a high number on your estimate, but now you have a high number that makes sense. So roofs, right? We live in a lot of areas where we have roof damage, whether it be from hurricane or hail, or some different types of damages could create damage to your roofs, whether it be a shingle roof, a tile roof, a metal roof, the flat roofs, TPO systems, right? There's so many different kind of roofing systems. How do you do them? What are the line items you're supposed to put? The first thing I tell everybody when you're writing a roof, order your roofing dimensions from a credible source. A lot of companies do offer roofing dimensions. Sometimes you can save a couple bucks. Order it from a good company because you're getting accurate measurements when you're putting that stuff in. A lot of these roofs are going to cost you 20, 30, 40 bucks, 50 bucks. It doesn't matter. Spend the money. It makes your estimate look that much more professional as opposed to you just writing a roofing item or just waiting for some roofer to give you an estimate and then having to go entirely off of what that roofer says. When you're looking at these roofs, learn what you have up there. Learn what your building codes say. Very common that you have a lot of roofs that have 3-tab. Well, guess what? That 3-tab, they may not be allowed to put that back up. So you might be removing a 3-tab roof, but having to put up an architectural shingle. It's very important that you know that. Know how to differentiate those line items. Know the trades that are going into when you're writing these types of roof. Know whether you can get away with asking for overhead and profit when you're writing these types of items. All those things will increase the value of that roof. It's very common sometimes, these building codes. I'll give you an example in Florida. In Dade County, you're not required to put a modified bitumen roof underneath your tile roof. But on the west coast of Florida, in Fort Myers, and Naples, and those areas, whenever you have a tile roof, their building code requires that roof now has a modified bit underneath it. Okay? That's a big difference. I mean, that roof could be a lot of money. So know what those building codes are. Know that when you're writing flat roofs, know what the pitch is like. You have a lot of these modified bitumen roofs that a lot of times can't come back up the same way. Some of these building codes, I just had one that we just did in Weston on an appraisal file. The carrier originally approved all the flat roofs, but said there was no damage to the shingle roofs. After a year and a half in appraisal and inspections and engineers and all that, we got all the shingle roofs replaced. And not only did we get the flat roofs replaced, but the city of Weston required them now to have a pitch that wasn't on there previously. They had law and ordinance. We were able to get them a better TPO roof with a proper pitch because we did our homework and we knew what the building code was going to ask for. So know what those things are. Know that when you're dealing with these modified roofs, learn what happens when you have a parapet wall. There's a lot of these flat roofs that have parapets. Some people don't even know what to do with the parapet wall. When you're doing a flat roof, if you've got a parapet, you need to flash it. So you need to make sure that when you're not only writing that flat roof, you're going to reflash flash that parapet wall, restucco that wall, and repaint that wall. And all those little items are going to equate to more money down the road on your estimate. Learn what those products are. Learn what the manufacturer warranties say on them. Learn the different types of tiles. Know when you can replace them. Know when the tile's been discontinued. Those are all things that are important. Know the difference between a barrel tile, a tile that's made out of concrete. Those are going to have price point differences on the system. Know the way that rivets work on an aluminum tile, on an aluminum roof, not an aluminum tile, on an aluminum roof. Those are different. There's different kinds of aluminum roofs, thicknesses, all that kind of stuff. It's really important. Know sometimes when you do these roofs, how's that going to affect the insulation? How's that going to affect the plywood underneath it? I hear it all the time. Oh, the plywood's never affected. Always try to write a percentage of plywood into your estimate. Don't write all of it, because that's not realistic. I see those all the time on roofing claims. The guy replaced the roof, and he also replaced every single piece of plywood on that roof. You're never going to get that from anybody. Now, the roof flew off, fine. But if it's a roof that didn't completely fly off, it doesn't make sense. You just wrote yourself an extra 5, 10, 15 grand on something you're never going to get. So know when you're writing these items, I get it. Listen, guys click on the Xactimate sometimes and see a line item and go, ooh, I can add that in. Yeah, oh, that kind of makes sense. Just because it's on there doesn't mean it applies to every single claim. So learn what those line items are, learn how to apply them, learn what it means to put them in your estimate. Learn the differences between the exhaust vents, the turtle turbines, all that kind of junk. That all goes into your roof. Know that you can get more money when you're replacing that roof with your ridge tiles. I see it all the time when I get carrier estimates. They paid for all the squares on the roof, and they tell me that's all they're liable for because the roof was 20 squares, so we only owe for the 20 squares. But they also missed the 150 linear feet of ridge tiles that were supposed to be on that roof. And if you didn't pull your roofing dimensions, you may not know how many ridge lines you have on that roof. You may not know that you were supposed to ask for that. You might go, oh, the guy paid me for all the squares. My client should be good. And you might be leaving money on the table. So those are little things that will help you when you're writing your estimate and will help you increase your estimate. And always remember, write those estimates. Like if you're going to get grilled in depositions, write those estimates. I'd like to say, write them high, but write them right. Because if you write it high and you write it right, there's nobody that can argue with them, right? So when they want to beat up that estimate, if you can justify what you put on there, even if it's high, they're going to have to give you the number that you're actually looking for. So when you do write that $100,000 estimate and you do want 80% of that number, you can actually get 80% of that number. You didn't write a $100,000 estimate that was maybe 50 grand, and then you're upset that you can only settle the file for 40. So know that your estimate is really important. And if you don't write your own estimates, hire somebody that's good. Hire someone that you can trust, and hire someone that's going to do them the way you want them to be done. Because I got this business because there's a lot of guys that are too busy. So I learned to write them right so that the clients are happy. Make sure that you learn how to write your estimates. It's a very important part of settling your claim, and it's one of the most valuable things that you can do besides getting new business. The best way to keep that business is being able to justify your demands, being able to justify your claims, settling those claims for as high as possible so you can continue to get referrals from those clients. And one of the best ways to do that is coming up with accurate valuations for your claims. So that's what we think we should do when we're writing claims. I think that's the best advice that I can give to anybody starting off in this industry. And good luck. All right, guys, so that's it for us today. If there's anything we could ever do for you, you could always contact our office. We're on Facebook, we're on the Instagram. Vince has all of our information. You could always email us. One of the things that we take pride in is actually being able to be there for everybody else that's in the group. We're always actively trying to answer questions whenever anybody posts something in our chats. So if you ever need anything or have any questions you want, make sure you're getting in contact with Vince. Make sure you're getting in contact with the group. If you're getting on the courses, utilize the courses. This is the kind of information we deep dive into when we're doing them. And remember, you're not out there alone. We all work together, and that's part of the reason that this works, is we're here to help each other succeed. And when you're part of the group, we're all here to try to help each other make as much money as possible.